Oh, oh, there we go. I was like, why can't I see anyone? Why can't anyone see me? I mean, and I forgot I had a little blocker on my webcam. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Let me spotlight this. Here we go. Awesome. Hello, hello. Here we go. Okay, let me move this guy over. Okay. Um, this guy's newest leaf is getting bigger and bigger, and I just keep rotating it so that it'll get kind of much more straight again. So this leaf here, and so I keep rotating it so that it'll end up like this, because right now it had gone backwards. So I'm getting it to kind of go forwards again. So it's getting there. It's getting there. Oh, for someone, yes. Yes and no. I'm feeling a little bit better. I've been going through a bunch of testing. I actually have an appointment with my pulmonologist tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. And I was at the ear, nose, and throat doctor on Friday for they did the I didn't know you could do that, but they put like a camera into my sinuses. It was like a whole thing. So yeah, it's been rough. But yeah, and then I have gosh, I have a bunch. I think I froze. Oh, I think I froze for a second. But yes, so battery of tests coming. So I'll keep everyone updated. But so far I'm okay. So so yeah. I do have some good news to share. So there is um a new family member, a new feathered friend that is going to be coming to join us, and she was getting weaned from her parents, and so they have just separated her and her siblings out into their own flight cage, and so we'll be going to pick her up in the next couple days. So her name is, well, it's Tillandsia. So you know the air plants, Tillandsia is their genus. So I decided to name her Tillandsia because she's all green. And but we're gonna call her Tilly for short. And so it's a parrotlet. And so this is one of the smallest parrot species. And so we're bringing home a new feathered friend. So I will be introducing you to her hopefully next week. Yeah, so that's a fun update. Oh, Irma, so oh, thank you so much. Let me see. Yeah, right, Synth. I love it. And Tilly, yeah. So I'm pretty excited about her. I have like all her supplies coming, like some has arrived, some is on its way, and it's supposed to be here, I think by latest Wednesday we're supposed to have everything. So we'll have everything set up before we bring her home so that you know, her cage is ready. I'm not going to be kind of going in there and changing things up. It's going to be set up so she can kind of get used to the new space. So what do you do if there is an aphid infestation on a mint plant without killing them? And how do you branch out a rubber tree that is growing too tall? All right, good question. So firstly, with the aphid infestation on your mint, you're saying, what can I do if there's an aphid infestation on my mint plant without killing them? So do you mean you do not want to kill the aphids, or you don't want your efforts to kill the aphids to kill the plant itself? Just to
The aphids.
Oh, so you don't want to kill the aphids?
I don't think it's my daughter's. I gave it to her, and I don't think she would want to.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, of course, I would just put soapy water or something. I read about that, and
Yeah.
or I put some kind of neem oil.
I mean, the only other way I could think of maybe removing aphids without killing them is probably oh gosh, if she were to go outside and maybe just spray the plant off with the hose, uh some of the aphids might just get knocked off and go into the grass or something like that, and without the added soap or anything,
Mm.
they maybe have a higher chance of survival, or manual removal. So
She
kind of
says
take,
it's too many.
oh, and she doesn't want to kill them.
No.
Um,
Yeah, ladybugs, that's a good
yeah, but
idea, but
ladybugs would eat them though.
yeah. And plus, by the time it came in the mail, who knows how long that would take.
Yeah. But I mean, the ladybugs would definitely eat the aphids. So if she doesn't want to kill the aphids, yeah, the ladybugs would definitely murder the aphids. Um, yeah, that's hard. Because I mean, aphids are one of the easier things to get rid of. But yes, like you said, soapy water, um, even like a little bit of like neem with water, even just like dunking the plant in like warm water, kind of giving it a wash and removing it. If it's planted, is it planted outside?
No, it's just in a little pot.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be really hard to get rid of them without, yeah, without taking them out, like without killing them, unfortunately. Yeah. The only thing I
Okay.
can think of is taking it outside and then doing like a hose with just water so
Yeah,
that
that's a
it
good
knocks them
idea.
off. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, there's
Okay.
more of a probability that they would survive. Um, Yeah, that's the only one. But in
Okay.
regards to your question about the rubber tree, how do you branch out a rubber tree that's growing too tall? Yes, you can actually cut them back. So if you wanted to, you can actually, if it's getting way too tall and you want it to just branch out, kind of become bushier, you can cut towards the top, kind of as low as you can go to the last node, essentially, like right before the last leaf. um or you can actually do under the last leaf, and then that tends to cause, kind of stimulate growth, and then it'll start to kind of bush out, and then you can take that whole chunk, and actually root that up if you wanted to. An
Oh,
option also would be air layering. If you would rather not do a clean cut, you could air layer the top so that it gets some roots before you cut it. Um, and then you could even plant it at the, in the same pot with the mother plant, and have it kind of growing in there. You can do that too with a clean cut, but if you'd prefer to do air layering. But that would probably be the easiest fix, is to just cut off the top, and maybe any branches on the side that maybe aren't looking very lively. This can kind of reinvigorate those nodes. They'll kind of start to push out more growth. So you could do that. It'll definitely make it kind of go from wanting to grow tall to kind of growing in width. Um, so you can try that. Rubber trees, I mean, they can put out, especially during the growing season, they can put out leaves pretty quickly. Um, and so if this would probably be like from now into maybe like midsummer is probably the best time to do any of that of that pruning back to encourage any encourage any extra growth. Um, but yeah, yeah, that would probably be the safest bet. Um, is just to prune them back. My rubber tree is not here. Oh no, my rubber tree's in the bedroom. Um, but yeah, you can cut them back to the last node that you'd want. So depending, I guess, on the height that you'd prefer, and you can continue doing that. So let's say you have like 10-foot high ceilings, and you want to keep it like an 8-foot tree or something like that, you can absolutely keep cutting it back. and just kind of propagating those little sections. And then yeah, and it'll encourage it to grow sideways, like to start putting out more branches.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Gabby is asking, my aloe is so skinny and leggy. Any advice? Yeah, so um there are first I'll say there are different species of aloe. Sometimes the aloes that are sold in stores and folks tell you, oh yeah, this is aloe vera. It's not necessarily aloe vera. It might be like aloe arborescens or just different species of aloe that can grow very skinny and tend to grow kind of upward and very leggy. So sometimes it can be just the species. There are quite a few species that they just naturally grow this way. But if you're sure that this is indeed an aloe vera, um, and it's appearing a little skinny, it could be oh, it used to look okay. So, okay, all right. So it used to look very healthy and firm. Okay, great. So, a couple things. So either it's not getting as much water as it might need. So this would cause those leaves to kind of recede, and for the plant's leaves to kind of look a little thinner and not only in terms of width, but they actually, it's like they kind of like shrink. They kind of go in, they kind of start to curve inward, and it can give that illusion that the leaf actually got like thinner. um and so this could just be that it's just a lack of that extra moisture. So I personally water my aloes every like 3 to 4 weeks. So I don't you definitely don't want to overwater them. But if you are maintaining a pretty steady watering schedule with them, um and it just seems like they're, it I would say make sure you're giving them a good soak. So I give them a really good bottom water. You want them to become fully saturated, and then you forget about them for a couple weeks. So then this gives them that time to really suck up that water, kind of fill back out. So that could be an issue. If it could just be like needs a little bit more water. If it's getting leggy, then that tends to mean that it's not getting the adequate amount of light. So they really like being pulled away, let's say from a western or southern window. You don't want to put them right up against a window from like a western or southern exposure, because that can burn them. So it would cause them to blush. So you might start to see, if you have your aloe and it's starting to turn orange or like a pink red kind of hue, that tends to mean that it's fighting for its life. Basically, it's getting sunburned, and it's trying to put out anthocyanins as a kind of like a sunblock, to protect itself. So if you can find a better light situation, it will definitely let you know if it's getting too much light. But usually legginess, which is also called ideolation, it tends to mean that the plant is stretching because it's trying to find a better light situation. Oh, here we go. I moved it from a southern window because it was getting reddish. All right, perfect. And I have only southern and northern windows. Right now it's in a northern window. Okay, great. So the northern window would be too weak for it. I would put it back towards the southern window, but not right up against it. I would probably pull it back maybe here, if your window is here, maybe if you have like a little area that's right off the window so that it gets that like indirect light, but it's not full on, if that's an option. Or even pulling it back maybe about 3 to 4 feet from that window. Another option is if you have a sheer curtain on your southern window, like a white sheer curtain where the light can come through, but with the sheer curtain, it kind of dilutes the light. It kind of calms that intensity a little bit. Yes, side table near the window. Perfect. So I would recommend moving it there. So the northern window is definitely not an adequate amount of light, and it would continue getting really leggy. Yeah, I definitely won't enjoy that. That might actually help too with the leaves as well. So they need um when they're actively getting the right amount of light. Whoop, I think I froze. Did I? Oh, I think I froze for a second. But as when plants are getting the adequate amount of light, then they tend to use up the water much more efficiently. And if they aren't getting enough light, they tend to just they're not. You might end up actually overwatering them, which would be really to its detriment. You definitely don't want to overwater an aloe. Because if you're watering it, but then it's not getting enough light, it's not using that water. The water kind of stays in the soil longer, and then that can increase that risk of potential root rot. So, side window by the southern window, perfect southern exposure. Um, Received a wilted um Alstroemeria. Ooh, what is that? By mail. How should it be treated so it will survive? I'm not familiar with an Alstroemeria. I am not familiar with that species, but I am familiar to plant mail arriving very, very dehydrated and unhappy. Let me just take a look as to what this is. Oh, the Inca lily. I did not know their scientific name, which is really cool because we're going to be talking about botanical Latin a little bit today. Um, Okay, cool. So yeah, I didn't know their genus. That is cool. Yeah. So if they arrived in the mail and they're wilted, now is are they cut flowers or are they like in with bulbs? Bulbs? Lilies? No. Do lilies? I'm trying to remember if lilies have bulbs, but are if they're rooted or not. Um Let me know. If they are um, with roots, if they have roots, what you could do is put them into a vase of water kind of overnight. That tends to be kind of a go-to with plants that arrive by mail that are very dehydrated. You can kind of let them sit in water overnight, not fill the vase all the way, but just enough to kind of cover the roots so that it adds a little bit more hydration to the plant before then the next day going ahead and putting it into its new potting mix or anything that you would be putting it in. If it is so it is rooted. Okay, cool. So yeah, so I would say probably put it into like a vase or just a jar with a little bit of water, just a little bit, just enough to cover those roots so they don't get completely dehydrated. They may have already gotten dehydrated during the trip, especially if there were any hot temperatures during transit. That can definitely do that. Um, I would say if there are any of the flowers that are just beyond wilted, where they're looking like they're gonna just die off, it's probably safer to deadhead them, so to remove them before they might start to rot, because that can affect the rest of the plant. Um, so yeah, but definitely it's just a little bit of water and kind of overnight, and then you would put it into its new pot or its new living situation if you are planting them outside. But yeah, just a little bit of hydration, and then not putting it in direct light immediately. I would put it in bright indirect light. So usually as you know they're coming out from being in a dark kind of box for an extended amount of time, kind of putting them immediately into bright light can cause them to be a little bit more vulnerable. They're in a very stressed, high stressed state. And so, especially if their roots are damaged or anything during transit, this could just kind of make it go a lot worse. They are at risk of burning. They start to dehydrate faster because they can't. They're kind of in shock, so they can't take up new water. So as they're photosynthesizing, because of the light, is causing them to use up whatever little water reserves they have, which again, detrimental to the plant. So you can put in bright indirect light. So if you have like a side table or something like that with a little bit of water in the jar, after you've kind of received them. Yeah, now if it's been a couple days that you've received them, I mean, if you haven't watered them yet, I would say you can definitely water them. And yeah, just kind of keep an eye out on those roots, because if any of the roots died in transit and you potted them up, what can happen is they can be starting to rot. And then this can affect the entire plant. And it's also another reason why the plant might look very dehydrated. It's just because there's no living roots that can suck up water. Yeah, so it's shipping plants is a very precarious thing. It can either go really well or not so much. So yeah, I hope they packaged it well, but yeah, the roots definitely need a little bit of TLC when they arrive. Oh, okay, so you watered it. Perfect. It's outside. Should I uncover and put in water? It's outside now. Oh, so it's already outside in the ground. I definitely wouldn't remove it again if you've already planted it. You're just gonna have to kind of let it recover. But is it somewhere in full sun, or is it in a slightly shaded area if possible? I know sometimes folks have like little like shade cloths or things that they can place over certain like plants, specifically when they're acclimating. Partial sun, okay, that's great, as long as it's not like in full intense sun. It's just gonna have to kind of root and reestablish itself. um that's yeah. Outside in the container it was received in. Okay, cool, so it was already in the container. Was it with soil? Because sometimes I know folks will ship the plant bare root but in the container. So if it was with soil, okay. So yeah, it's probably then just I would just let it acclimate. That's a pretty good way to ship it if it's in soil. But yeah, you're just gonna have to let it completely acclimate. So you might lose some leaves, some of all the flowers, but it should bounce back hopefully once it kind of gets reestablished. Yeah, so I know shipping plants, it's yeah. All right, let me show you. Let's see here. I wanted to talk a little bit about botanical Latin today. So you can hear Julia in the background. She's really she is going today, singing. I'm hoping that she'll find a friend in Tilly. Um so let's see. She's saying hello. Here we go. So awesome. All right, cool. So I wanted to do a little class today introducing everyone to just the basics of botanical Latin. I had been discussing this previously and folks did show interest. So I will kind of be going into, for some of the classes, kind of going into the background, the botany of houseplants. And just in general, and this is kind of just an introduction as to so what is botanical Latin? Why does it exist? Why it exists? And just a couple of examples of some of the like there are actual rules for botanical Latin, and then introduce you to just a couple very common plant families that you might be familiar with if you garden, or if you grow your own vegetables. So it's just a handful of them, but just to kind of show you how this binomial nomenclature, which means a two-name system, kind of works. So just to kind of introduce you to that. So yes, well, welcome. So welcome, of course, to the Urban Garden Learning Series. And so we will be discussing some botanical Latin today. And so let's see here. I found this really cool graphic here of a botanical garden, and I just had to use it. I was like, this looks so neat. This is really making me want to go back to the New York Botanical Garden. It has been a couple months, and I definitely need to get back out there. I'm actually looking down, and I can see like a bunch of species that I recognize. It's amazing. If you're able to go to any of your local botanical gardens, I highly recommend, especially if they have any types of greenhouses. So that's always a really, really nice way to escape when it's very cold in your area. It's very, very cool. So a quick background as to why would you want to use botanical Latin? What's the point, right? So common names can be just very confusing. We can take Pothos as an example. So gosh, a couple, even Pothos is just a prime example. So Pothos was a scientific name, was a genus that included Epiprenum and Scindapsus, and they had since been separated out. There is a Pothos genus, but it's not necessarily a plant that you actually come across in garden centers. It's more so a plant that so the true Pothos is more so a plant that you might come across in like by a private collector, but it's not something you find readily in stores. What we're finding in stores is Epiprenum and Scindapsus that are still being called Pothos, even all these years that they are no longer in that family. So Epiprenums, which we know commonly as Pothos, you can just see the confusion just in there. Sometimes the common names that we give plants are actually based on scientific names, but it can sometimes happen that they are retired scientific names that are no longer applicable. So this is also an example with snake plants. So snake plants used to be in a genus called Sansevieria. You still see them called Sansevieria. I still catch myself calling them Sansevieria, but they are no longer Sansevieria. They actually were reclassified based on their DNA. And it turns out snake plants are a Dracaena. They're actually in the Dracaena family now. So they all got renamed Dracaena with their respective specific epithets, which is the second part of the name, which I will explain in a moment. But so you can see it can get very confusing. Also, sometimes some plants, one plant, like the Pothos, let's say, has a bunch of common names. So everybody knows them differently. Some folks might call them Pothos. I've heard them called Pothos. Also having them being called a money plant. Devil's ivy is another common name for our Epiprenums. And you can see super confusing, a bunch of names for this one plant because it can vary depending on the region, the country. So you end up having quite a few names, and you might not know if you and your peer are talking about the same plant, right? Because there's so many different common names for one plant. Then a lot of plants have the same common name. So like pothos, called the money plant. Uh, there's other plants that are definitely called the money plant. We have the money tree, which is Pachira aquatica. We have the Pelea peperomoides, which is also called a money plant or a silver coin plant. So it can get, yeah, very messy, because if, let's say, I'm telling you how I take care of my money plant, but I'm referring to my epiprenum, and you're telling me how you care for your Pachira aquatica, which is the money tree, and we're thinking we're talking about the same plant, the care is just not the same. And so we would end up getting very confused and giving the wrong advice about the wrong plant. Also, some plants just may not have common names. They might just have, they might go by their scientific name. So examples like, magnolia, that's an example. Magnolia is the genus, but that is how, there might be like the star magnolia, tulip magnolia, but it's always magnolia with the added name of like the cultivar or the variety, right? So yeah, no, you end up using the scientific name anyway in that way. And then yes, plants that have common names that are really misleading. So just again, we're circling back to the epiprenum. One of its common names is devil's ivy. And then this can get very confusing because it's not an ivy. It's not a true ivy. It does grow similarly to ivy, in that it has that kind of cascading vining growth, and it can grow up trees, but it is definitely not an ivy, and it just grows very differently in terms of like the care. So yeah, it can get very, very confusing. So it is really good to know the scientific names of the plants that you have, because this is just going to kind of cut through all of the confusion. So if you're speaking to someone, let's say you go to a plant shop, or if you start to really get into the collector's game and you start to go to conventions or expos with plants, you definitely want to know the genus at the very least of the plants you're looking for. And some other examples of like common house, like Hoya. Hoya is the genus. So we call Hoya and then their respective name. But yeah, so knowing that at least that genus is going to help you find more of that plant if that's something that you really like. So like euphorbia, that's another one. Absolutely love euphorbia. So knowing that, okay, well, that is the family that I really like, then I can get more of them. So it's very cool when you start to really dive into that, into this whole sphere of botanical Latin. It really is very much a different language. And I will share a couple books. I'll just kind of hold this one up real quick, but I know I've shared it before, but it's called A Portable Latin for Gardeners. I'll stop the slideshow and show these books in a moment. But yeah, just the Portable Latin Guide, if you kind of just want to get started, it's definitely very helpful and handy to have on hand, if you're just starting out. So what are the parts of a common name of a binomial name, of that botanical Latin name? So it's a two-part system. So before, when Linnaeus, so Carl Linnaeus is the one who came up with this system in the 1700s, if I'm not mistaken. And before, it actually was a 6-part name. And he would have students that would come to study with him, and they would basically follow him around the gardens. And he would test them by pointing out to a plant. And then they would have to give this really long name. And the name was more so of a description of the plant. but it was very, very difficult, a 6-part name system. And so it was ultimately tailored down to a 2-name system. And this is the system that we continue to use to this very day because it is quite efficient. Um, and what's cool is these names they have a lot of root words. So originally, a lot of the root words were Latin or Greek. And so hence botanical Latin. And so what was really neat is they really do work as descriptors of the plant itself. Now, we do have a lot of names now of plants that are kind of named after like nouns that have been kind of Latinized. So they're the names of the person maybe that discovered them, or they're named in the honor of someone. So that can definitely happen. Also, it can be named for the location or some really strong identifying factor. And it doesn't necessarily fall under a Latin term or a Greek term anymore. But originally, yes. And you can see here with Hellebores, so the common hellebore, or if you might know it as the Lenten rose or Christmas rose, very, very toxic. And this is one of my favorite examples to show because you can actually see the description right in the name. So Hellebores orientalis. So hell meaning to hurt, basically, to cause injury. And then Boris means food. So it happens to grow in the East. It is a plant that comes from Asia. So Orient, so the Orient, how it was used to be referred to, so Orientalis. And what was really interesting is that it's basically called the plant that will hurt you if you eat it, that you can find in the East. So super, you can really start to, if you look back at these, some of those binomial names for our plants, they really does tell you a really important fact about the plant. And so this was deemed very necessary to tell you that you should not consume this plant. Definitely don't eat this plant. But yeah, it's super cool once you start really digging into it. And then there are some grammar rules. So with Latin vocabulary, they are gendered. So if you do speak one of the Romance languages, especially Spanish, the words are indeed gendered. And what's cool in botanical Latin is that while there are masculine and feminine kind of gendered words, there are also words that are considered neuter, which basically like neutral, genderless. So yeah, you end up having to kind of adhere to certain structures when you are coming up with a Latin name. So if you were to discover a new species and you were to name it, there are some naming conventions. So there are those rules that you have to follow. So if the genus, for instance, is masculine, then the second part of the word, which is called the specific epithet, that also has to be the same gender. And together, the genus and the specific epithet form the species. So when this is why it can get very confusing when folks are saying, oh, if they're just referring to the genus, for instance, they're just talking about the overall family. So think of that as the last name, right? But backwards. So it's the last name, it's the family, and then the specific epithet is more so the first name. So this is kind of to show you kind of where they're individualized, so they fall under that family. Another rule that you might see is how you write the names. So if you're typing the name, so on the computer, well, before, of course, on the typewriter, it has to be italicized. So Helboris orientalis. If you go to a school where you're learning botany, which I did, they do indeed take off points if you submit any worksheets or anything that you've like, printed out at home and given in. Or even if you email your professor your work, it has to all be italicized or you lose points. But if it is handwritten, you don't necessarily need to write it in cursive if you don't like to, but rather at least underlining them, and they must be underlined separately. That's a whole other rule that you can lose points for. So underlining them separately if you're handwriting them. So if this is on a seed packet, for instance, or you're making handwritten labels for your plants, if you really wanted to follow the naming conventional rules, yeah, you would have to make sure that you do one underline under the genus, one underline under the specific epithet. And so, as I mentioned, so a lot of those names did come from Latin and Greek, but a lot of them do include other things. So kind of like where they were found, who found them. So you definitely get a lot of, especially now. I mean, we've seen really interesting names, even like odes to like Darth Vader and things like that. There was I think it was a new orchid. I'm trying to remember how the scientific name went, but like it's like Vaderus or something. Like they actually called it in honor of Darth Vader because it looks very much like Darth Vader. So sometimes you get these really cool, funny scientific names because folks are just having fun with them while they're naming them, and they're naming them after something again that they might look like, or it could be completely unrelated and it's just something that they wanted to name the plant after. One cool example, like for instance, honey locust, which is a tree, the genus is actually named after one of Berlin's first botanical garden directors. And so the genus is Gleditsia. And it's named after him. So, and it's like Gleditz or Gleditsch I'm not sure how to pronounce his name because it was in German, but Gleditsia is the genus. So it was named in honor of him. So you can see that happen definitely. And so if you are struggling to figure out the root of a word and you're going, well, I don't know where this came from, you can definitely try to see if the prefix could just be in reference to something else. It could just be someone's name. A great example too, Monstera adansonii. Adansonii. So Adanson was a botanical explorer that found quite a couple species, and including Monstera adansonii, and so it was named in his honor. So you can definitely see that. So yeah, and as I mentioned, both words need to be of the same gender for it to be grammatically correct in Latin. So Latin is a dead language, but it's very much kept alive by the scientific community. Also in terms of pronunciation, that has also been a point of contention between different botanists. So you'll see that some folks might pronounce something different. So for instance, I had always been told that it was Peperomia caperata, for instance. So that's the ripple peperomia. And then when I went to school specifically to kind of really learn more about botanical Latin, it turns out that in true pronunciation, it's caperata. So peperomia caperata. But you still hear, it commonly, it's still called caperata, and the same with kalanchoe. So kalanchoe is the proper way of saying it, but however, everyone still says Kalancho. So, and it's fine. It's totally fine. The only folks that are really affected, I guess, are the botany teachers, if they're a real stickler for botanical Latin. But don't worry if you can't figure out how to pronounce it, or you keep hearing everyone pronouncing it differently. We're all doing it. Even folks that have studied botanical Latin, like myself, we still end up flubbing and then getting corrected by our botanical Latin teachers. So please don't worry, especially if you're just starting out. No need for perfection. It's just a learning journey. But here are some just examples of so this is the suffix. So this is how the word is to end. And this is how they would end in the different types of gendering these terms. So with masculine plants, so something like skindapsus, so us, ending in us. Ops, a great example is lithops. Penstemon, that's another one. So these are considered masculine gendered words. Now, this has nothing to do with the plant's sex, has nothing to do with this. It's just some old rules for Latin that have to be followed for, I guess, the names to make sense. So as long as it's the same, they end basically kind of within the same realm here, it's acceptable to the scientific community. So for the feminine, solidago, so something like the goldenrod. Ilex, for oh my gosh, not ivy, holly, ilex. That's another example. Monstera, ending in an A. So that's considered in botanical Latin the feminine suffix. So yeah, you can definitely start to kind of make those connections with some of those names. And then there are names that are neuter. So this means that they're just genderless. So like philodendron is an example. And so let me see, nasturtium. That's another example. I'm trying to think of a muh. Something that ends in a muh. Dendron and was a lot easier. Huh. If anyone can think of one, definitely drop it in the chat. I'm trying to think of one that ends in ma, and I can't think of one right now. But yeah, you can definitely with stigma, stemma, phragma. No, I can't think of one right now. But here I wanted to put together a list of some of the more common kind of root words that you might see in specific epithets. So usually in the second half of the name, and kind of run you through these. So for folks, again, that might speak the Romance languages. So if you speak like Spanish or Italian or Portuguese, just as examples, a lot of these might sound very familiar to you. So it definitely helps. My parents, I mean, of course, English is my first language, but I grew up in a home where I was also taught Spanish. And so it's kind of fortuitous that I really took an interest in plants and the sciences in general, because yes, scientific names, it's much easier for me to get context clues as to what the word might mean. And then that kind of helps it click a lot faster. So that's definitely something cool when you realize like, oh, wow, cool. Like, the being bilingual definitely will help with your botanical Latin. So definitely something to kind of throw yourself into if it's calling you. But just a couple examples. So aqua, I mean, very obvious. Water, roots. So rhizome right? So rhizo usually means root. Radix is another example for root. You might see esculentus, meaning like edible. I'm trying to think there. I think it's is it? It's the taro. I think it's colocasia esculenta. Um, But yeah, esculenta, so meaning edible, so something you can actually eat. Tinctorious, meaning something that you can use for dyeing, so for making, like for coloring. So something that would essentially, you can tincture it, so you can extract the usually tinctures are an extract of chemical compounds from the plant, but you can actually do a tincture and also extract color. So you might see if you ever made like a tincture for rose or, hibiscus, nettle. So nettle gives you this really great green that you can use. Rose, this really pretty pale pink. And hibiscus is a really nice deep red. You can still see the colors when you have the tea, but it's much more vibrant when you do a alcohol tincture. Scandens. So if you're familiar with like peperomia scandens, so that means climbing. So you'll actually see some houseplants that end in scandens, and it's literally referring to the fact that they're like viners. They're creepers. They're liking to kind of grow. And then bicolor, meaning two-colored. So maybe the leaf is one color. So an example is Quercus bicolor, which is the swamp white oak, which has the back of the leaf is a really light brown, kind of beige silver kind of color, and then the top part of the leaf is like really nice dark green. So that bicolor effect. Officinalis usually refers to some herbs. So you might see some, let me think of Althea officinalis, for instance, like marshmallow, vulgaris, like Artemisia vulgaris, which is mugwort. So that means it's very common. It's something that kind of pops up everywhere. So very much so the case with mugwort. Sempervirens. So for instance, the hennin chicks. If you grow hennin chicks, you might be familiar with the sempervirens part of the name, and that means evergreen. So hennin chicks will maintain themselves throughout the winter. They might slightly dehydrate, kind of look a little shriveled up, but for the most part they will survive over the winter, and then continue to put out growth once spring really sets in. Maculata. So if you know Begonia maculata, so spots, it just means spots. And so maculata. Aureus. So if you know the Monstera aurea, these all means like yellow, golden. So yeah, it's just, you start in Monstera albo as well. So with whitish. And luteus is yellow. So if you do see like lutea, that is something that's yellow. It's not like a gold, but rather like a bright yellow. Lavis, meaning very soft. So you might have certain leaves that might be covered in like little hairs. It might seem very soft. Repens. So I think is it pulchra repens? But repens usually means also spreading, but more so kind of flat kind of spreading rather than a climbing type of spreading. And then there are certain names like something like agavoides, so something that ends in oides. So that usually means it looks like something else. So it looks like the first part of the name. So agavoides, for example, there's Echeveria agavoides. And so that means that it's an Echeveria, so that's the family. And then the second part of the name, agavoides, it means that it looks like an agave. So we see the same thing with Pelea peperomoides. So it's a Pelea that looks like a peperomia. So these names really do tell a little story about the plant. It's a really cool like descriptor. So it is something cool to kind of start to dive into. So I just wanted to introduce you to a couple of common families, and then I'll open it back up for any questions. I just wanted to give you a quick little introduction to it. If this is a topic of interest, I could definitely go much deeper into it. But I just kind of wanted to give everyone a little taster, just to understand. So why are these names a thing, and why why would it be helpful for me, for instance, to know these, and as I said, regardless of it being maybe confusing when you're discussing the plant or looking up information about the plant, that can be another issue, if you don't know the scientific name of the plant. But also it's very helpful to, one, in really kind of along the same vein of researching your plant, it's finding out, well, what's my plant's ecosystem like? How can I better take care of it? Is it native to my area? If it's not, maybe I have to check, is it an invasive species that maybe I shouldn't be planting in my backyard? Maybe it's toxic. This is another reason to know exactly the scientific name, because maybe it's part of a family like aeroids, monstera, scindapsus, epiprenums. These are all very toxic to pets, for instance. So knowing that they're all in the same family, the Ariaceae family, that breaks down into all these other families, the monsteras and the scindapsus, and the syngoniums, all these kind of little subfamilies, these are all toxic. These are all toxic to pets. So kind of just figuring that out. It also helps with learning about identifying the plants themselves too, because once you start to learn about these families, these classes of plants, and you're able to really find like the family and then the genus. It also kind of helps if you're trying to learn how to identify plants on the fly. So if that's something that you're really, really wanting to do, you're wanting to go into a garden center and be able to point at everything and know exactly what it's called. A lot of that is pattern recognition. And if you want to learn more about the patterns, you can learn more about the family itself. And it's, again, you're going to want to know the name of that family in order to do that type of digging. If you're really committed to starting to get to learn some plant ID, it's just very, very helpful. So this is the evening primrose family, the Onagraceae family. And this family commonly is also called the evening primrose family, as I mentioned, or the willow herb family. And this is a really great book. It's called Botany in a Day. I highly, highly recommend this book. I actually think, now to come to think of it, I think I have a PDF version. I will check. If I do, I'm happy to share it with everybody. So you just let me know. And if I do indeed have it, I'm happy to share it. Another book I'm happy to share that I know I have as a PDF is a Dictionary of Root Words. So if Botanical Latin is kind of scratching an itch of curiosity for you, and you want to kind of learn a little bit more, I'm happy to share that book as well. It's a really, really great reference book. I don't have a physical copy. I only have that PDF, but I'm always happy to share it out. But you can just see here, so there's some defining characteristics for this family. And so for instance, the 4 petals and 4 sepals. So they look like they are petals, but they're not true petals. They're kind of in the background. So you have your petal and then your sepal in the back. For a great example is tomatoes. So the Solanaceae family, when you have your tomato and you take it off the vine, it looks like it has a little star right on the top. So that was the sepal. And so that's what's left when you have your fruit. You have that sepal. In some cases, for some species, they fall off before you pluck the fruit. but in some cases they remain on the fruit. So another one, persimmons. So if you see that, it kind of looks like a little hat that is on your fruit, and that is actually the remnants of the sepal. So it's like this background part, which the petals, they cover the petals originally, and then yeah, and when the petals drop, they're done doing their thing, and the plant starts to, the flower now was fertilized and starts to form the fruit. The sepal remains and kind of stays stuck to that fruit. So sepals, petals, and then counting stamens. So this was all, Linnaeus was painstakingly, he was naming thousands of things, not just plants. He was naming animals as well. And yeah, with the flowers, it was like literally looking at samples, counting, kind of figuring out how these plants were classified, what were these similarities. And of course, sometimes they did get it wrong. Of course, there were plants that look very, very similar that are absolutely not related. But yeah, it was actually part of that process, is counting the individual stamen, the separate parts of the plant. There would literally be a dissection of the plant itself to really understand all of its parts and count them. I'm glad they they did that. Definitely, that's a lot. But there's this really great book called What Linnaeus Saw, a scientist's quest to name every living thing. And it's really a whole kind of just really insightful book as to just what it took to kind of come up with this naming system. And it's not a really hefty book, so it's definitely a quick read if you're really wanting to kind of learn a little bit more. And then Rosaceae. So this is the rose family. So also defining characteristics: 5 sepals, 5 petals. So the plant parts are always occurring in 5s. Now, of course, we know that our wild roses still have those 5 petals, but we have genetically manipulated the roses so much that, of course, we when we think rose, we don't even think of a wild rose anymore. We think of, this beautiful multi-petaled kind of cluster, right? And that's what we think of as a rose. But the wild roses have 5 petals. And so you can still find them. They're really beautiful. It's very, very simple, beautiful flower. And then I mentioned magnolias before, so Magnoliaceae. And so yes, it's ACE, so the ACEAE at the end. And so before, I did not realize that that's how it was pronounced, and I would pronounce it like Magnoliaceae, or no, sorry, I'm saying it correctly, Magnoliaceae. I think I would say AC, but it's ACE. So yeah, again, you don't have to be a stickler for pronunciation at all. As long as you really know them by sight, it's very helpful when you're doing your research, if you're reading, especially if you really start cracking the books to learn more about botany and plants in general. Yeah, at least knowing them by sight is going to be very, very helpful. I love magnolias. Their seed pods are so interesting. I have a little collection of different magnolia seed pods. Definitely cool to see. But yeah, these beautiful large leaves, really gorgeous, very thick, very, very thick leaves. And I've seen Magnolia grandiflora, for instance. So grand, large flora flower. So grandiflora, huge flower. And when I was in Georgia, and these things were like bigger than my face. They were huge and they smelled amazing. Definitely a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. I don't think they can grow here in New York. I've never seen one here, but oh, down south, they are so beautiful. Why did it go? Hold on. Where did it go? Here we go. It jumped. Okay. Lilies. Lily ACE. So these are really cool in that there are only 3 petals in lilies. They have 3 sepals as well. And what happens is that these sepals are kind of false petals. So they, and sometimes can be the same color. Sometimes they are a contrasting color, but it gives the illusion that the lily has 6 petals, but it actually doesn't. So it only has the 3, and then 3 are actually only sepals. So this is really cool. We see this also in irises, where they'll have their 3 main petals, and then there are 3 sepals that end up kind of giving it that really cool kind of look to the iris, but those actually aren't petals at all. So it's super cool when you start to think about the structure of plants. And then parsley. So they're something in the carrot family. So the parsley family, it's the Apiaceae family. So if you know celery in Spanish, apio. So again, it really helps when you also know a Romance language. But they used to be called the Umbelliferae family. Because if you look at their flowers, it looks like an umbrella, but they are no longer named that. But if you really look, it's like an umbrella on an umbrella. So it's like a little mini umbrella, and then it connects to an even larger umbrella. So this is the defining characteristic of the carrot family, and so all their flowers are shaped in this way. So the dill, parsley, celery. What another one is anise, cumin, fennel, cilantro. So these are all members of this family. And so if you really look at the flowers, they all have that same structure. They might be different, the sizes of the flowers, but the structure remains the same. And then the Brassicaceae family. So these are known as cruciferous vegetables. So cabbages and like cauliflower, mustard. So they all came from the mustard family, broccoli. And so they all have these, Julia saying hello in the background, but they all have these 4-petaled flowers. And yeah, they all started with the wild mustard, and they have become even Brussels sprouts. These are all in the same family. So they're just super, super, super neat. And then Fabiaceae. So this is the pea family. And so you might recognize this flower. So it has what is called the banner, and then the wings and the keel. There is a great book by the same author of Botany in a Day. I think it's called Shahira's Quest. I'll share the name as well. I'll post it up in Facebook. I think I have the PDF version of the book as well, but it's meant for kids, but quite honestly, it's a really fun book. So you can still enjoy it at any age. But he has a young child traveling from island to island on a quest, and every island is a different family of plants, and then he talks about those defining characteristics. And with the pea, it's just, the artwork is really beautiful, and it's like a canoe that docks, and when it docks, it forms the shape of this pea flower. It's really beautiful. It's a great way especially for kids, if you want to get your kids learning about plant identification. But yeah, absolutely beautiful flower. And they usually grow as vines as well. So they're wonderful. I love pea flowers. And then the Solanaceae family, which is the potato or tomato or eggplant family, which is also a family full of toxic plants. So the ones behind in the photo are the trumpets, angel's trumpet. So these are all very, very toxic plants. So while the family has very edible plants that you can enjoy. It also has very toxic family members. And they have these star-like flowers, sometimes very large, like these angel trumpets, and sometimes very small, like the tomato flowers. But they're super cool. I mean, they are a beautiful family. I mean, if you really look at the flowers, absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, you have to be very, very mindful as to what members that you are growing. So it was just a little kind of dipping our toes into botanical Latin. Next week we'll be doing just a Q&A. And I wanted to share with everyone that the plant swap document, it's a sheet where you can put your name, any kind of contact details, how you prefer to be contacted, that would be public to everyone on the sheet. What you have to share, maybe what you're looking for as well is in there. And there's also a column if you'd like to swap seeds. So as I am the, oh, I froze. Oh, there we go. Because I'm the executive director of Herbalists Without Borders, I do have, we get donations from seed companies, and so I give out seed grants. So there are quite a couple seeds that I have to share with everyone. So I put a column in there in case anybody is interested in swapping seeds. So if you don't want to swap cuttings or established plants and you just have seeds that you'd want to share, we can totally do that. So feel free to check it out. Maybe you can find folks that are near you that we can start to swap plants with. I'm gonna be doing some cuttings and just kind of getting, these plants kind of ready now with the growing season. We're in June, it's about to be summer here in New York. So gonna kind of get everybody started, and yeah, I'm gonna trim some plants back. So I'll be adding more to the sheet. So if you see that there is a plant that might be of interest to you, then what you do is you could reach out to the person and see if you can do a trade, do a swap. Yeah, it would be really fun to kind of get everybody to share their plants. Also, these classes are always free. I'm going to keep them free. But if you'd ever like to offer a tip, they're always welcome. Not necessary, but always welcome, of course. So including that in here. Also, the Patreon is live. So if that is something that you would like to do and support, definitely let me know. And yeah, I'll be trying to post more content on there regularly. Especially now with the summer, I'm going to be doing some trips to different botanical gardens, and I'll be posting those videos there first. Also, for those of you who might not be aware, there is an Amazon shopping list. So I made basically a whole list of things that I personally have purchased and that I have here in my house in some way or another. And so I kind of put all these favorite items on a big list. So if you ever wanted to kind of check that out and peruse and see if there's anything that you might like to get, I only added things that I've tried that I like. So feel free, check that out. So yeah, so you can grab anything that might be of interest. And if you do want to reach out to me, info@urbangarden.eco. If you prefer Instagram, also urbangarden.eco, and the same with the website. So there we go. Just a quick little class on botanical Latin there. So let me stop the share real quick. There we go. Okay, I hope that was informative. I hope that was helpful. And I will show you the books I was referring to. So, the first one is The Portable Latin for Gardeners by James Armitage. Armitage? Sorry, Armitage? I think it's pronounced Armitage. But yeah, I definitely like this book. It's small, it's broken down really nicely. So basically it's broken down in sections on like features of plants, on colors, on locale, things like that, where so if you kind of want to learn about specific types of botanical names, I actually have quite a couple plants in here, and this is a great example. So this is ginkgo, and it's ginkgo biloba. So bi meaning two, lobe. So this is one lobe, and this is another lobe. So biloba. This is just a really, really big ginkgo leaf. Um, yeah, I have, I have another one. Um, this is another one. I really like how this one dried. So ginkgo biloba, real beautiful. I was actually reading an article recently, and so you see these veins here. And so there is a theory that these were actually needles. At one point, these were needles, and then they fused together to form this fan shape here. And so really, really cool. So it's a theory that is being looked more into with the fossil record. So, but yeah, they definitely feel like ridges. So super, super cool. Um, but yeah, I love pressing leaves. Almost all my books have leaves in them. So if you ever borrow a book from me, you might open it and there's a bunch of leaves falling out. And then this is the book, What Linnaeus Saw, A Scientist's Quest to Name Every Living Thing. So really, really great book by Karen Magnuson Beale. Really, really good book if you kind of want to, if you want to kind of learn a little bit more about binomial nomenclature, because it doesn't just work for plants, it's also for mushrooms, so it's for fungi, for animals. So yeah, you can definitely, if even if that's, if maybe you're interested more so in fungi than you are in plants or in animals, learning their scientific names is great. And then there's this book by William Stern. There is the William Stern Library at the New York Botanical Garden. And this is Botanical Latin. Now, this is a hefty book. It is my favorite reference for botanical names. This is amazing. It is a very large book. It's like 400 pages. Oh, a little over 500 pages. Um, yeah, this is very much kind of like a dictionary, and it breaks them down into the types of terminology as well, similar to that little book, but much more in depth. Yeah, my throat is still not back yet. Woo. Okay, I had to mute myself. That was a really loud cough. But yeah, highly recommend those 3 books if you are trying to learn a little bit more about botanical Latin. Um, really great books. And feel free to let me know if you want a copy of Botany in a Day. I'm trying to see where my copy is. Um, I don't see it immediately accessible, or I would show you. But Botany in a Day is really good too. And the Dictionary of Root Words as well. Really great book. Now, the Dictionary of Root Words, it's kind of like out of print. So that's why I was only able to find a PDF. I had to buy the PDF. That's a really great book too. So yeah, if you wanted to study more. And what else? What did I want to show you today? Oh, so there were a couple of succulents, succulent cuttings and leaves that I had put to propagate. And I wanted just to show you how some of them are, how it's going for some of them. So look at these roots. So far, so good. And with this one, it already is creating its baby right here. So you got those roots. And these are the ones that I left in the just air. They are not in any type of substrate. I've been doing experiments in leca, in perlite, in lava rock. And then I left a couple of these just on my desk. And they're going crazy. So this is about time for me to put it into something. But I wanted to leave it out of the soil so that I could show everyone today. Just look at all those roots. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And yeah, already growing. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of cuttings for some of my succulents. I am currently rooting some pieces of my dragon fruit. I have a giant dragon fruit. So those, once they're rooted and they're good to go, I'll put them on the list that they're available. So if anybody would like to swap and get some dragon fruit cuttings, yeah, we can totally do that. But all right, if there aren't any questions, again, hope that was informative, and definitely let me know if you have any questions. I'll post up the names of the books as well on the Facebook group. But if you would prefer kind of like an emailed list or anything, you can let me know. Here we go. I'm gonna put. Oh, here we go. How do you pot those in the little roots? Yeah, so with those, I have really tiny pots. So I kind of get them started in that, and once they're nice and rooted in there, I transfer them up into larger pots, definitely. Oh, Suman, yeah, awesome. I can send you botany in a day. So info@urbangarden.eco. Here we go. Yeah, you can definitely put them in there. Virginia, would like to see how you store your plant pots and soil amendments. Yes, yes. I actually have a little rolling cart that I keep that on, and I have my excess soil amendments. I actually put in cereal containers, in the plastic cereal containers, in a cabinet. So what I could do is I can kind of record that and then yeah, show everyone. That's a good one. Yes, how I store them. Because you do want to keep certain types of soil amendments in specific types of temperatures, like with worm castings and things like that. You don't want them to start to grow mold or anything and be in an area where they would be getting wet, or like cool temperatures where they could maybe grow mold or anything like that. But yeah. Oh, thank you, Synth, for catching the typo on the Solana ACE one. Thank you so much. Yes, yes. So folks, hell yeah. I'll send you copies of the book for botany in a day, and I'll send also the root words book. Oh, awesome. Okay, Linda, sure. Yeah, I could totally do a deeper dive. I can make it like its own class if folks want to come. And I could do it kind of like maybe after, like I'll do it kind of like after this one. I can do not today, of course, but I can do it something like that where it'll be like a double feature. So if folks want to stay, I would do like a deeper botanical dive. I'd love to start doing those again. Oh, Synth, Denver's Botanical Garden is free tomorrow. Oh my gosh, go. Take pictures, definitely. That is awesome. Hell yeah. Take advantage. There's a lot of botanical gardens that do free days, that do events too, that sometimes are reduced price or they're just open like to the public. Uh, Definitely check those out. Those are always fun. I love the Queen's Botanical Garden. They're always giving out free tickets. So especially if you volunteer. So if any of you are in New York City, the Queen's Botanical Garden, when you volunteer for them and you go to do an event like to weed or anything like that, they actually give you free tickets so that you can, of course, when you go to volunteer, you're not paying, but then you get free tickets to come with your family to the Botanical Garden. So that's a really cool incentive that they always give their volunteers. So it's definitely awesome. Okay, awesome, Linda. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, because I was thinking that I can do kind of little brief ones here in the context of like houseplants and why it might be important to know certain types of botany, for instance. But then yes, I want to kind of go back to doing some kind of deeper botany classes. For those of you that are in New York City too, I am this summer, I'm going to be teaching some locals like plant ID, but not just like a walk that I usually do. I usually do these walks around the city, but I'm going to be doing an intensive. And so it's going to be for folks that really, it's not just to kind of point and look at the plant and move on, but it's a very like intensive to really learn about plant ID, family, also urban ecology. So that's going to be tied into it. And it's going to be with a specific focus on invasive species management as well. So yeah, if anyone is local, what I'm thinking I might kind of do some like filmed ones so that I can offer it to everyone. But if you are in New York City, then you know that'd be fun. I'd really love to have like a big group. I have a few people interested, like 3 or 4, but I'd love to have a bigger group that really wants to dig into plant ID. And what I'm thinking is like kind of even going around folks' neighborhoods. So that we would meet like at different neighborhoods, so that I can kind of walk them around their own neighborhood and identify plants, because then that's a really great way to practice. If you start to work with the plants that are in your immediate neighborhood, because then you can keep practicing, right? You really get to know them, and then you can kind of venture out where you get to the point where you can literally drop someone into a park they've never been in, and they're able to identify plants. And so that's what I love is when so I do walks for the city. So I'm invited by like the New York Parks Department or the Natural Areas Conservancy to do walks for them, and they're always like, oh, like come to Seton Falls or come to to these parks I've never been in. And then I get there and they're like, all right, the walk's starting in a few minutes. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, hey, everyone, I've never been here. So let's kind of go, and, and then it's so much fun to one, get to know a new park, and then kind of get lost in it. But then, yeah, to just, be able to identify the plants like that, where you don't have to know the area specifically like that. You can just go to a different park and do that. So yeah, it's so much fun, and I want to teach more folks to be able to do that. And so yeah, so that's a big one for me, is I really want to impart that knowledge. I really want to share. I want to get people excited about plant ID. It's something that definitely really excites me. And so for folks that might really be into it, I definitely want to teach them how to do it. Inwood, yeah, I've never been to Inwood Park. I'm born and raised here in New York City, never been to Inwood. I really know I've been told several times that I need to go. So and the cloisters, I don't think I've ever been to the cloisters. I don't think I've ever been to the cloisters. I know of the cloisters, but I don't think I've ever been to the cloisters. But yeah, so like those are things like I think I recently, right before the pandemic, was the first time I'd ever gone to the Belvedere Castle. Um, and so it's so funny when you're born and raised in New York City and you haven't hit like a bunch of these like tourist spots and stuff. And so yeah, I haven't been to Inwood, and no, I don't think I don't think I've been to the cloisters. Um, so yeah, I definitely need to go. I For that Seton and Falls walk that I did, that was last year. And that was the first time I'd ever gone. And that was such a cool park. That was a really cool park. But I love being able to do that. So I really want to get other folks on that train to to really getting that really good with Plant ID. Um, it's just so much fun. And I've been working on so I like birding as well. So I've been working on my bird ID as well. And Brian, for my birthday, bought me a pack of the new Sibley's flashcards for North American birds. And there's 100 cards in that deck. So far I have 96 memorized. But 4 keep messing me up. I can't, for some reason, the song sparrow and the chipping sparrow, I can never get them right. And I think it's the California towhee. I keep getting that one mixed up. And then it's like um there is another one. I think it's some type of woodpecker that keeps messing me up. So I have the ones that I don't know separated, and then the ones that I do know. But yeah, so I definitely want to also share folks, with birds too, get them really interested in birds. Gabby says, born and raised in NY, I went to the Statue of Liberty in my 20s, and we were like, we don't need to go in. With that said, I do recommend the cloisters. Oh man. Yeah, I was telling that to my husband over the weekend. We were like, we were talking about family that was coming to visit, and we were like, you do realize, like, I think the only I went to the Empire State when I was little, and then I didn't go back until I was in my 30s because we had family coming and they'd never gone. And so we're like, okay, we'll take you. And then Top of the Rock, like I went in my 20s. Um, yeah, and the Statue of Liberty, I went, I think also when I was a kid, and we only went because my uncle and my cousins were visiting from North Carolina. So so it's like, yeah, you only end up going to like these tourist spots when family comes and they want to check it out. But otherwise, yeah, we don't really we don't really hit the tourist spots. But but yeah, so if anyone is interested in kind of joining me on an intensive for Plant ID, let me know, because I'm really excited to get that going, and it's looking already amazing here in New York City. I think we're gonna have a really hot summer, but hopefully it's not too rainy. And because I really want to get out to parks more. But yeah, but thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and checking out the class. I hope it was enjoyable and informative. I'm gonna share out those books with everyone. I'll post the links also in the Facebook group in case that's a little more helpful. What I'm thinking, I might also create kind of like a little folder that I'll put with the replays of books, and then just put PDF books, kind of drop them in there as well. So that might be something for folks to easily kind of go back and just download any books that I might have mentioned and shared out in case that's more convenient. But yeah, so I'll pop that all in there. But yeah, whoops, somebody's ringing my bell. That might be more bird stuff. That might be I know I ordered some things off Amazon. So for our new bird that will be here in the next few days. So she should be here before next Monday. So, oh my goodness gracious. I will somebody keeps ringing the doorbell. So I will share her with you next week. So thanks so much. You're very welcome, everyone. And yeah, have a great rest of your Monday. Have a great week. Stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.